For years, I've talked about the holographic nature of how the human condition works. And, I've been a therapist for a long time. I have done mental health work for 38 years, and I have metaphors for all kinds of things. But it's this whole idea of when something notable comes in and gets our attention, it's there for a reason. And we have to really start to pay attention to it and start to learn how to interpret it and what to do with it. And the holographic nature could be that you're watching someone else have an interaction, but it triggers something within you. It could be that what I call a sign from spirit. It could be a hawk or an owl or something comes in and it gets your attention because it's right there. It could be really anything that kind of seeps in, fades out. And everything in our world really needs to be looked at from a 3D or even a 4D perspective so that we can see what this life thing is all about and also how it is that it relates to the soul. And I'm going to go through several different things to help you understand this, to really get the what I'm talking about, because this whole concept of consciousness is growing in the literature. It's growing in research. It's probably the last 20, 30 years. It's really exploded is this idea of how do we become more conscious? How do we become more aware? Now, and if you've read my book, Soul Health, you also know that I go beyond what's called mindfulness. And, John Kabat-Zinn kind of coined that phrase. And I look at it as, well, he mentions it as basically a day-to-day, moment-to-moment awareness of everything, the good, the bad, and ugly included. And I go beyond mindfulness because I think consciousness has more action to it. Mindfulness is noticing, mindfulness is just being aware that something is there. But consciousness is taking that awareness and taking it a step or several steps further to go, why is this coming to my awareness? It's not just that it's coming into your awareness, it's why is it coming to your awareness? What are you supposed to know or learn or get out of having whatever it is come into your awareness? And so I want to just expand this whole idea because we cannot consciously evolve unless we are noticing and also taking it those steps further to say to ourselves, gosh, what can I do with this? Where is this information coming from? What am I supposed to do to make this more meaningful or help me understand this? So the whole idea of the holographic image, if you think about a hologram, it's basically a 3D kind of concept, maybe 4D too, depending on how you look at life, that something is basically from a science perspective, is that light is projected in a way that makes something visually look real. So you can have something move in front of you, but really it's a hologram. You can have something created. There's lots of 3D movies out. This is the same thing. It's a holographic kind of image that they're creating on screen. And, in Asia, there are lots of billboards that are created with holographic images, and people think that, things are jumping out on the street toward them, but really it's all of the ways that, these marketers are using light. So how is it that when you're walking through life and you have something just pops in and you're like, whoa, wow, what was this about? Or this person comes in, or a situation comes in, or a lesson comes in. This is all about your soul's evolution, as far as I'm concerned. Because if we can start to look at our world like a holographic, constant holographic image, everything that comes in and fades out, comes in and fades out, it paints the picture of the story of our soul. It helps to season our soul if we know how to pause long enough to pay attention to it. So, for instance, for centuries, basically, Native cultures have looked at signs from spirit, mostly in animals or nature, and how to interpret those and how to put some meaning to those kinds of things. So, really, that holographic image is how do we bring that image in? How do we bring in, if a hawk is flying towards us or near us, how do we bring the energy or live in the moment of that holographic image event to go, gosh, what is that hawk trying to tell me? Now, when you see an interaction, like I mentioned earlier, and it kind of triggers something, or if you are in an interaction, but you're starting to see a different way of looking at how you are relating to that person, or you start to see that that person is relating you to different in a different way, it's another way of kind of looking at this from a holographic perspective to say, wow, I am seeing this in a new way. I want to help you understand the term metaphysical as well. That term has become kind of I guess, attached to the woo world and attached to spirituality and attached to this whole idea that, oh, that's metaphysical stuff. We don't want to pay attention to that. But the very word, the definition of the word just means beyond the physical. It means beyond what is right in front of you. And so this is part of the holographic image. It's the metaphysical world is about starting to see the world in richer and deeper ways so that you can glean the meaning and glean kind of whatever it is that is supposed to kind of saturate your soul in the moment and be in that place where it can take you to the next level. So that is exactly where conscious evolution comes from. So again, when you think about the word metaphysical, it's not some spiritual, it's not always some spiritual term. It's really about how do we start to see the human condition in general and learn from it? How do we start to see it from a 3D perspective? If we were sitting there watching a movie of our life, but it's a screen that's in 3D, we're going to see it differently than we see that flat screen and we see just that basic face value kind of meaning. So the whole idea of holographic living and the whole idea of metaphysical interpretation is about seeing what is beyond the physical, seeing what is beyond what is at face value. And so I talk about, this whole idea of consciousness is the noticing. We can go through life and not notice a thing. You can be driving down the road and not be conscious of what's around you. And I don't know how many times friends and I have talked about, wow, that person isn't even aware of their surroundings. They're swerving all over the place. And so it's that whole idea of how do you become aware and conscious of what's around you in a way that helps you connect yourself with those experiences. And I talk about the importance of really embracing the importance of our souls. And it's because the moment that we become aware of that holographic image, we become kind of more informed about how we are in relation to everything around us, including how it is that that relationship extends all the way up to source. Because once we start to view these as again, I'll use the word spiritual, but as spiritual events, kind of sacred events, meaningful events, then it starts to open up our world. It starts to enrich our world. And we see the layers upon layers upon layers of what is right in front of us if we are willing to look at it, if we are willing to see it. And, there's a word that a lot of people in the spiritual world use. It's ascension. Now, I don't love the word. And the reason I don't is that there are a lot of people who have kind of created that word as a better than and worse than. In other words, those who are ascending are being better humans, and those who are ascending are doing their work. And I agree that there's an evolutionary process to it. But the word ascending is really just meaning that you're learning and growing. And so when you are learning and growing and you are evolving as a soul, you tend to look at the multiple layers of life. You start to see through what's just in front of you and start to glean that meaning. And so those layers that are there are really important for, again, not only your healing process, and I'm going to explain that in a minute, but it's not only for your healing process, but it really is for your soul's evolution. The more aware we become, the more connected we can become with one another, and the more connected we can become with nature and the planet and the universe and the multiverse and the megaverse, everything. It's like we start to connect in with ourselves. So that whole idea of looking at life from a holographic view, whatever the lessons are that come in and fade out, same lesson may come in and fade out a million times in your life until you get it, and then you don't have to have that particular lesson come in. You might have to notice again that there are signs all around you for things that you're supposed to be paying attention to. And I could go into this for a very long time, whether it's animals, whether it's a song on the radio that keeps popping up, whether it is a message to you, or maybe you're having this whole experience of, wow, and I could give you an example of this in a second. Gosh, I'm having these memories of something that happened a few years ago. And then basically someone from that time pops up. My example of that is that about 4 years ago in September, October, I rafted the Grand Canyon. Now, it was one of the most important experiences of my lifetime for many, many reasons. I love the Grand Canyon. That was the 7th time that I've been to the Grand Canyon. There's something sacred there for me. The energy there is very restorative and healing for me. It's not just a bunch of rocks, because I see through the canyon. I see through that there's just a bunch of rocks there, and I see the sacredness. I see the nature. I see the energy. I see what happens to me when I'm around that space. And so 4 years ago, like I said, I rafted the Grand Canyon, and I called it my birth canal because I knew I was going through another transformational period. And, when you raft 277 miles down that canyon, you can't help but feel like something is changing within you. You can't help, well, you can help that because a lot of people on that trip weren't really paying attention to what was really happening to them. Um, but I was going through this major transformative process through this thing because I was seeing all of the layers. I was seeing what an important metaphorical experience this was. Now, lo and behold, like I said, this has been on my mind the last few weeks for many reasons. And yet, just yesterday, I received an email from someone that was on that trip that I have not heard from for those 4 years. And she's a therapist in Texas. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, interesting how, had I not put two and two together, looked at that holographic image of, okay, that's really been coming up in my consciousness, the whole rafting trip, the whole experience of it. And then here she shows up. And so again, it's like there, if you just look at all of the holographic nature of everything that happens in your world, in your life, driving down the road, you can have it. You can have it, when you're going to bed and you have this thought that you hadn't had for a while. It's whatever comes into your awareness to get your attention and then fade out. But if you can pause long enough with that holographic image, that holographic experience, whatever it is, and just say to yourself, okay, let me absorb this, let me know what it is I'm supposed to glean from this, then that day or that moment, or maybe in the next few days, it's all going to come clear to you. It's going to help you understand energetically why you were having that experience. So the layers of life, the ways we notice, the ways that we can be more aware and conscious of our surroundings, more conscious of what's happening within us. Again, everything that happens within us is part of that holographic image. Because if we have an emotion pop up, it's just like having that holographic, image of some sort pop in outside of us. So an emotion is part of it. An ailment is part of it because it could be very symbolic of something that's going on, and sort of an imagination or an image that is popping up in your mind, or a memory. It could be any of those things. But it's that holographic nature of looking at the human condition that is going to help you enhance and create a more sacred space for yourself living within your skin. It is going to be one of those things that helps you live in a richer way. It's going to help you live kind of in the way that our ancestors, way, way, way back, our native ancestors did, because they made meaning out of everything. And our worlds have become very kind of empty the more we have left our souls behind, the more we have left that kind of meaning that happens all around us all the time. The more we've left that behind, the flatter our experiences have been. But this is time to widen out and really expand what it is that we're believing. Now, part of the reason that I bring this up is all about healing. I am a psychologist. I've been doing this for a very long time, but I've been doing soul healing work for a very long time as well. And it's one of those things where I talk about encouraging, let me say this, I encourage people to pay attention to those things that come in and out of their lives. Pay attention to what the lessons are. Pay attention to what these synchronistic events are. I don't love the word serendipity because serendipity, the definition is a fortunate accident. I don't believe anything happens by accident, so I kind of avoid that word, but I look at the word synchronicity much more because those things come in and out all the time. And they are divinely created, divinely timed for us if we know to look for them, if we know to pay attention. So, from a healing perspective, it is so much more effective and quicker for us to learn and grow and evolve and heal if we are willing to put the energy into stopping and saying, gosh, what is that about? What is this sign about? What is that about? Why is this happening to me? I had a client yesterday bring in, I've seen her for probably 6 or 7 years. And I see her once a month just to kind of check in and kind of keep her path going. And she said, gosh, this situation happened at work. Why is the same situation happening over and over in my life, whether it's with relationships, with past partners or family members, or now it's a coworker in a situation with a program. And I basically kind of reminded her that our lessons are going to fade in and fade out along the way if there is another layer of it to heal. And so she's gotten past a whole lot of the really challenging emotional relationships she's had. She's beyond that. But I reminded her, I kind of pointed out, gosh, does this remind you of those previous relationships? And she said, dang, hadn't even seen it that way. But it's partly how it is that we learn to see and start to resonate and start to realize, gosh, this reminds me of something. What is this reminding me of? Because that holographic nature of it is going to point the finger, point the little arrow at exactly the wound or exactly the thing that needs to be overcome so you can move beyond whatever it is that's holding you back. So peeling the layers, moving forward, all those kinds of things. So the holographic nature of the world is really about learning how to live more metaphysically, learning to live beyond what is right in front of you and see the meaning, see the connections, see how to connect into, those energetic messages that are there, and also just look at all of the layers of the human condition that are embedded in all of those experiences. So this again, I talk a lot. I was on a very long walk this morning, and I'm talking to myself about, okay, well, what's next? What do I do for myself? How do I get, more information out? And the basic part of this is my mission is to bring what I call ancient wisdom to the modern soul. Now, I do Akashic record readings. I do spiritual readings. I do past life regression work. A lot of people see that as the woo world and see that as, oh gosh, I don't want to go there. But what I'm trying to do is help people understand that the human condition is laced with all of these meaningful kinds of aspects of our existence, our awareness. And if we could start to weave it into how we live as humans, not only are we going to live in a more rich way, but we are going to evolve beyond the snags and the difficulties we have within our own particular life that are going to get us further and further and further. So spirituality and the soul has much more to do in my world about helping people understand the human condition and move beyond it than being in the woo world and basically not relating to people. And so this is where I try to make this user friendly and tangible and help you understand how this all works within our human condition, because the soul is not separate. The soul is in every aspect of who we are, every cell of who we are. And this consciousness piece needs to be explained so people can put it to use in a tangible way. So this holographic kind of metaphor is just one more way for me to help teach you how to do that. So would love to hear your comments. I hope you have a wonderful day. Look for all those signs, look for the meaning, look for how things fade in and fade out. Look for what it is that can really enhance you moving forward. And I will be back with more soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.